Hello and welcome to the garden. It is absolutely baking here today. Blue sky, hot sun, and the walls here create this really hot climate. I don't want to be here for too long. The reason I'm here, of course, is that I've lost my usual sowing place in our greenhouse that's now full of chilies and peppers. But anyway, I've got a little bit of sowing to do and possibly a bit of potting on. I'll have to check the plants and see what state they're in. So I've got out the deep cell trays, so you might be able to guess the sort of crop I'm putting in those. It's going to be sweet corn and French beans. They really do appreciate the depth in these trays. I mean, you sow them pretty deep anyway, so it's no good starting them off in something shallow, and these produce plants with fantastic roots. So I'm going to get going with that. Let's have a look. What varieties have I got? So this is one of the times when I do sometimes grow a hybrid, and I've got Lark this year. It's one we grew some years ago. I haven't grown it for a while, but it always did quite well for us. So I've gone back to Lark. That's a really nice sweet corn. And then for the French beans, the main ones that we'll be taking as whole pods, I've got the purple podded bean again. It is so delicious and such a tender, tasty bean. I think that one is probably going to be a permanent member of our sowing list. And then I've got Blue Lake, so I grow that from time to time. It's a good green bean, solid performer that. And then I've got one of the climbing Borlotti beans. This one is Lingua di Fuoco, the tongue of fire, I suppose that means. And then I've got some Dwarf Cannellini beans, and I'm not sure if I've got any space to put these, but I will sow some and we'll see what happens. Well, I better get on with it quick because I am going to melt here. So let me fill up one of these trays. This is a slightly coarser and richer compost mix than I normally sow in. It's normally pretty light. I've actually got a little bit of feed in here because these things are pretty greedy, and they're going to be in these cells for, well, not too long, but enough time that I thought it might be worth adding just a little bit of feed to the compost. I don't want them going hungry before I plant them out. They will germinate pretty quick, and they do develop quite quickly. Right, so I'll just fill that loosely to start with. Of course, there's fibre and junk in this stuff. I haven't sieved it. It's not really necessary for big plants like these. So I'll start with the sweet corn. I probably need 20 plants, and I've got, what have I got here? 28 cells, so that should be plenty. Now you can soak this seed, of course, but I don't tend to. So I'll just lay those, pick the best seeds out, lay them out first. Throw anything away that I don't like the look of. Right, I'm just going to push those down just a little bit. Going about an inch down. And then I can cover those. And brush the rubbish off. That will do nicely. I will give that a drop of water. I'll make sure that compost is really very well hydrated to start with, because it's got to rehydrate those seeds. But if you want, you could soak them for a little bit, and that may help. I do that occasionally with some seed, but I don't do it with sweet corn. It's a little bit random whether I bother to soak something or not. Right, I'm going to just push these cells down a little bit. So, I don't need a huge number of these. I think if I do 8 cells of the purple podded bean and 8 of the blue lake, and then I'll do the rest of the Borlotti. Now, what I'm going to do is put 3 seeds in each one of these cells, and I will probably pull out one of those if all 3 germinate. But I do tend to plant them out in small groups of usually 2, but occasionally 3 plants, and they grow quite happily like that. Oh, these are nice looking seed. I can't see any rubbish in there, so just drop 3 in each cell. Nope, that was 4. I don't want 4 in there. And now the purple podded. One or 2 dodgy seeds. It's just not worth sowing anything that doesn't look 100%. And finally the Borlotti beans. I don't know why they've come in a box. That's basically 1/3 full. But they're very pretty beans. Now if you want to be fussy, you can sow those with the scar down. But I'm just going to drop them in there. They will sort themselves out. Right, then just cover it again. Take the worst of the junk out of this compost. Right, that is done. I will move those into the polytunnel probably, and I'll give them a really good soak in there with the hose. So, Cannellini beans. I think what I'm going to do is I'll do some pots for those. Right, I shall put, I think, 3 seed in each pot, just like in the cells, but actually I might like 3 stems in each one of these pots, so maybe I'll put an extra seed in each one, and then I should be fairly confident in getting the 4 that I want here. That's fine. Better too many stems than too few, and then I'll just cover these pots. And again, these will go in the polytunnel, and I'll give them a good water in a minute. So this is the tray of winter squash and melons that I started recently. Germination was really quick and very good on the melons. I've got a full set of those. The squash are a bit variable. I've got plenty of the Chioggia squash there, and those I was thinning those out, and I'm still waiting on a couple of the butternuts and the sweet dumpling. That's not great, but they've been a little bit slow. These two have only just come up in the last day, so I will probably get the others up soon. But just in case they don't come up, a couple of days ago I was getting a bit nervous about these because the melons were so quick. The squash were taking quite a while. I did sow some spares, so I will definitely have plenty. Anyway, I want to take a look in these cells and see what they look like. They are quite young plants, but so I don't know if that's going to show up on the camera, but there is a nice little network of fine roots there. They could stay in these cells clearly for some days more, maybe not quite as much as a week, but I will definitely want to move those on. And now I'm going to check one of the melons. These are smaller plants, but again there's a network of fine root there, so at this stage they could be moved on. They are definitely not pot bound, and of course I really don't want them to be pot bound. I want to keep them growing. So these pots are a pretty good size, I think, to move them into, and probably when they've filled this pot with roots they can then go in the ground. That's a little bit too much. The old compost is so light that it's falling apart, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. All of the cucurbits, they can really surprise you how quickly they develop. I mean, these were only up a few days ago and they're racing away already. And I don't want to inhibit their development by leaving them in small cells. Oh, those aren't small cells, but any cell is pretty small for one of these fellas. And they're great looking plants, and even on a smaller scale, these cell trays, these are from Container Wise, seems to be what everybody's using nowadays. These are fantastic. I really like square cells and square pots. They're much better for root development, and these are particularly good. They just produce the most fantastic little plugs. Ooh. It's got nothing to do with me, it's just the nature of the trays. They do produce great little plants. You don't get that winding round of the roots, and they're down and ready to go. I think it really does help, and it makes a difference when you plant out something with roots in that sort of condition. I mean, if you put something in a big round pot and it gets a little bit pot bound, those roots never really get out into the planting hole the same. But these are really great for that. They produce plants that are just ready to get their roots down. It's exactly what you want. So these melons, they're nice little plants. They probably need at least another week, probably 2 weeks before I plant them out, and they're going to go in the cold frames. Now, as it happens, temperature wise, they could go in there right now. It is pretty warm here at the moment. Nighttime temperatures in the coming week are pretty good, so that would have been fine, but you can never tell, so I don't want to get them ready too early. And the cold frames still have crops in, so they've got to be cleared. But I would think at least 1 week in these pots, and possibly 2. I will wait until they've filled out the pots a little bit before moving them on. They're a little small to pot on today, but it's certainly not going to harm them, and it's better to be a couple of days early than late. But anyway, I'm going to finish off the rest of that tray now, but that's all I'm doing today, so that will be all for this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.